So the term fake news has been very much weaponized by the current administration. And very often when they say that something is fake news, it's not actually fake news. It's just news they don't like or news that paints the administration in a negative light. But we have some actual fake news that was repeated and parroted by the administration and even some right wing media outlets that turned out to be, as the name actually suggests, completely and totally false, and it relates to an agreement, or more specifically, pieces of an agreement that supposedly are part of a Mexican agreement that Donald Trump has reached. And before I even tell you what was said and what's true and what's not true, one of the worst things that a country can do geopolitically is to make itself not trustworthy. When other countries can't trust you in the big picture sense, I'm not talking about intelligence gathering and the reality that many countries have, intelligence operatives within a country that are clandestine. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying when other countries can't trust you to even stick to the deals that you make with them, can't trust you to simply tell the truth about what you've agreed to do with them, you become toxic on the world stage. And that's what Donald Trump has become. One big example being the Iran deal. President Obama forged forward with the Iran deal, the Iran nuclear deal. Donald Trump didn't like it. But when Donald Trump took over as president, Iran had not violated any elements of the Iran deal. So when Donald Trump comes in and says, I never liked that deal, we're just backing out of it, immediately the United States loses credibility, not just with Iran, which maybe many Americans don't care about, but with the entire world community in terms of being a country that other countries can have the confidence will stick to agreements that they sign, even when the next guy or gal is in the White House. So that was a horrible example of the ways in which the Trump administration simply cannot be trusted. But now we have something that's also horrible, which is that it appears that Donald Trump completely made up elements that supposedly had been reached as part of a deal with Mexico, all meant to show how smart and strong and a great negotiator Donald Trump is. Think back to a couple of weeks ago when Donald Trump announced on Twitter those absurd tariffs on Mexico, which would make things more expensive for everyday Americans. And Trump said at the time the goal of those tariffs was to get Mexico to do what he wants on immigration, to finally stop people from coming to the United States from Mexico illegally, including from points further south of Mexico. And Donald Trump said that the tariffs were meant to sort of push Mexico into compliance with what Donald Trump wants, except that if the tariffs actually succeeded in hurting Mexico, it would cause more people to want to come to the United States, which is exactly the opposite of what Donald Trump claimed that he wanted. So we explained how those tariffs made no sense. 3 days ago, Donald Trump announces he's made a big deal with Mexico. Trump won. Trump was right. His threat of tariffs worked, and Mexico has agreed to do all the stuff that Donald Trump wants them to do, except it appears that Donald Trump was lying, at least about part of it. Check out all of the things that Donald Trump tweeted about this. Many of which Mexican Foreign Secretary Marcelo Ebrard now says are not true. Donald Trump tweeted, quote, Mexico has agreed to immediately begin buying large quantities of agricultural product from our great patriot farmers. Mexico says not true. The Mexican Foreign Secretary, we do not have a specific agreement on products of that nature, period, full stop, Trump's lying. Monday, Donald Trump claimed it was all done because of the tariffs and because of the relationship that we have with Mexico. Also completely untrue. It appears as though, according to the Mexican Foreign Secretary, only 2 actions were agreed upon on Friday publicly. There's nothing else. And one of those was actually already previously agreed to and isn't even a new thing. It's not clear that Donald Trump knows that. The Mexican Foreign Secretary, Marcelo Ebrard, saying, quote, there is no other thing beyond what I have just explained. They wanted something else totally different to be signed, but that is what there is here. There is no other thing, referring to Donald Trump's sort of implication that there are unwritten elements of this deal as well. Mexican authorities saying this is it. There are 2 things that are part of this deal. Number one, a commitment from Mexico to deploy its National Guard to the country's southern border with Guatemala. Now, It's hilarious that that's even considered an accomplishment by Trump, because Mexico already had agreed to do that before Donald Trump even started the tariff threat. Understand that. That's something Mexico had already agreed to do. Number two, that's part of this deal, is that Mexico will now publicly support the expansion of a program where some asylum seekers will go back to Mexico while their cases are being adjudicated or processed by the American immigration system. That has already been going on quietly. Okay. Understand that 11,000 Mexicans have already gone back to Mexico under this action or agreement by Mexico. Mexico is now just publicly going to support the expansion of that program. So understand the absurdity of what's going on here. Publicly, Donald Trump claims that there are things in the deal which just aren't part of the deal. He gets publicly debunked by Mexican officials. When we look at what's actually in the deal, there are two things in the deal, one of which was already previously announced. It's not clear Trump knows that and thinks it might actually be a bona fide accomplishment. The other is something that Mexico has already quietly been doing, but now they are going to publicly support expanding. This is total fake news. This is how it all develops. And it's really important to understand the process. Trump tweets about it. The Trump sycophants and followers go crazy promoting it and claiming victory on the basis of Donald Trump's tweets. And then we find out, oh, Mexico says like almost none of that stuff is true. And the stuff that is true isn't new. So media outlets go to the White House for comment. They say Trump tweeted this, and here's what the Mexican authorities say, and here's what the records say that we've been able to find. And the White House simply doesn't comment. And meanwhile, most Trumpists will never hear about the fact that this was fake and concocted. It remains the truth in the minds of Trumpists that Donald Trump has actually accomplished this when he has not. It's sad, but it's dangerous. It's weaponized ignorance. It's weaponized low information. And on the world stage, it makes us look extraordinarily childish and like we can't be trusted, which under Donald Trump, we actually can't be trusted. And that's the most important takeaway in terms of the effect of this stuff on geopolitics. The short term, I guess, will be resolved. Like eventually there will be some seeing eye to eye between the U.S. and Mexico about what is and isn't in the deal. And it'll probably look more like what Mexico thinks is in the deal than what Donald Trump thinks or claims is in the deal. But the irreversible, or at least a very difficult to reverse problem that's caused here is the national embarrassment. That is the United States seen as dishonest, the United States not being seen as even a remotely reliable negotiating partner. That has been precipitated significantly under the current president.